Hey everyone, welcome back to the Internet of Things podcast. This is the 397th episode, and I am your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and here's your co-host,
Kevin Toffel.
And we have quite the show for you today. We are going to be talking, it kind of feels like a lot of little things in the wake of the one big Matter launch that happened last week. So we've got rumors that ARM is going to change its business model, and since there's a lot of ARM silicon running around in the IoT, we should keep an eye on that. We are also going to talk about Opta, which is a new programmable logic controller from Arduino. We're also going to talk about the encroachment of IT tech into OT spaces with the news of some new Marvel silicon. Vivint has plans for more stuff in the smart home. We've got new devices, new trackers from Eufy, which is the smart home brand of Anker. And Nanoleaf is expanding their product options. Plus, we're going to touch base on some Matter stuff. And we've got a few little Matter updates for people that you may have missed amid all the stuff happening last week. And we're also going to hear from this week's sponsor, ARM. And our guest this week is Matt Rose, who is the CEO of Apana. And we are talking about creating digital twins for managing water inside enterprise and industrial systems. And this feels nerdy, but it's really important because we're not really running out of water. There's lots of water, but potable water is a problem. And we're going to be talking about using the IoT to make that more efficient. So all of this and more await you. But first, a message from another one of our sponsors. This week's sponsor is Silicon Labs. They are a leader in secure, intelligent wireless technology for a more connected world. Their integrated hardware and software platform, intuitive development tools, and robust support make them an ideal long-term partner in building advanced industrial, commercial, home, and life applications. Silicon Labs makes it easy for developers to solve complex wireless challenges throughout the product lifecycle and helps you get to market quickly with innovative solutions that transform industries, grow economies, and improve lives. You can learn more at scilabs.com. Okay. Big story. And in case you missed it, I should tell you that ARM is a sponsor of the newsletter and the podcast. Just before we go into this, I hate leading the show with stories that are not yet confirmed. And this is not something that ARM is talking about. This news comes out of a lawsuit that was originally filed by ARM against Qualcomm. And it's kind of crazy because normally you don't sue some of your largest customers, but in this case, ARM did. It was in the wake of ARM's acquisition of a server company called Nuvia and Qualcomm doing some different designs for server chips. And ARM has been working their way into server chips for quite some time. They've got lots of this was one of the stories I've been covering for 10 years, which is ARM's slow encroachment into the server landscape. Because,
it's like the year of Linux.
Yeah. Mobile had been played out. We all had mobile phones. They were like, it's a pretty saturated market. Let's go into servers. And the reason you want to do that is because there's a lot of companies. Actually, there's not that many companies buying a lot of server chips. And the selling prices on those are high. So you can actually make a lot of money selling chips into the server market, and ARM wanted to license their chips to companies that sold chips into the server market. So that's like a lot. So this lawsuit happened, and then Qualcomm filed a counterclaim. And what we're seeing in some of the evidence from these trials is ARM might be thinking about changing its business model. Qualcomm says in its documents that they filed with the court that ARM is telling chip makers that semiconductor manufacturers will not be able to provide other elements of their ARM-based SoCs if ARM also offers that as a licensed product. So what that means is if you, as Qualcomm, have been building a chip that uses, an ARM application processor, but maybe an AMD graphics processor or some other custom neural processor, ARM is saying, no, you know what? We don't like that anymore. You need to use the ARM Mali chip and the Ethos neural processor if you want to use the ARM application processor. And this is a big deal because a lot of companies currently don't do this. That was kind of the feature of getting this. ARM they do a license where they sell you just like the basic license, but they also sell something called an architecture license for a lot more money. And if you have the architecture license, and this is what Qualcomm, Apple, Google, a lot of companies, Samsung, they all have this. This allows you to take the ARM core architecture and then tweak it to your best efforts and best bets for your customers. And that's how these guys differentiate themselves. So ARM's kind of being like, nope.
Potentially. This is all based on Qualcomm's countersuit and what they're saying. So again, just to stress, this is reported information. We don't know if Qualcomm's allegations are correct or accurate or whatever, but let's assume for a second that they are, because you hit the nail on the head. This would have massive repercussions throughout IoT as well as other industries, but obviously we don't focus on computing in general. I mean, just to take something that maybe more people, I think, can wrap their heads around. I will get away from IoT for a second and just use Apple as the example. Apple has been making their custom chips using their ARM architecture license, the more expensive one that allows them to change that architecture, use their own image signal processors, use their own GPUs, etc. I know they've got neural units on their A series chips now. And they're M1s and M2s for the Macs and whatever. But basically, if Qualcomm's allegations are true and this does happen, you couldn't have iPhones with all those custom chips in them, making them, not optimized between hardware and software. So companies like Samsung, MediaTek, Google with their Tensor chip, this is industry wide. Let's just leave it at that. And maybe we can talk about from an IoT perspective with the microprocessors, what this could impact.
Yeah. So this, from an IoT perspective, microcontrollers, they're not complicated. They're not like the giant server chips that ARM is really fighting with Qualcomm about. But this does incent big chip makers and more chip makers to speed up their RISC-V adoption plans. And I've talked to a number of players in IoT, in any kind of integration, any radio chips, networking chips, all kinds of. They're all looking at RISC-V, and they're looking at it because it's an open source hardware model and because you can tweak it to work for IoT, for servers, whatever. And there are some dedicated companies already out there building chips using RISC-V for the IoT. I think what this will do here is because ARM's basically, I should clarify and make sure y'all understand that ARM is not telling Qualcomm this. Qualcomm is telling the courts that ARM has told its customers this. And ARM has yet to talk about this yet publicly, except to say that Qualcomm's filings are, quote, riddled with inaccuracies. So we're waiting for more on this. But just the fact that this, the second ARM sued Qualcomm, everyone was like, oh my gosh, I think I tweeted some person, the person eating popcorn, because I was like, oh, this is going to be rich. And it is. It is rich in a scary way. And I think it will drive people to think about people are already evaluating RISC-V. That's not a secret. So this sort of action is just going to push people to go faster because it feels kind of anti-customer.
Yeah, very much so. Think about it, let's leave the company names out of it and just say, so you create this chip architecture that anybody can use. It's a popular architecture. Applications run on it well. It's global. And you license out that architecture and you charge a fee for it. And people can pay more for the fee and change that architecture, right? Well, they can't change that architecture anymore. How do they differentiate? How does that help or hurt the industry? I think it hurts the industry because you won't have advances in chip architectures like I would propose Apple has made, for example. They're running full laptops on what you would consider a smartphone chip, in a sense. So what does this do to all the people who use those microcontrollers that build, the radios, the sensors, things like, it's massive. It's a massive anti-competitive problem, again, based on what we're hearing. I'm kind of curious, and I don't know if you have any thoughts. I kind of come back to what happened last year with NVIDIA trying to buy ARM. This is kind of what we were worried about happening if NVIDIA succeeded.
Some people in the media are speculating that ARM is so pissed off that that Qualcomm blocked the NVIDIA acquisition that they're going after it. I have no idea. Like, it's been so long since I've had to like sit and parse the day-to-day on the chip side, but dang.
Yeah, this is weird.
I just don't know. And so Qualcomm's going to have to prove this. ARM still has to come out and talk about it. So we'll wait for that. And in the meantime, keep an eye on this. We threw this in here because it is like it has the potential to be hugely significant, but it could also just go away because it's all based right now on lawsuit filings. I'm going to hope it goes away.
I'm going to hope it does too, but I'm going to just point something out at a higher level. This type of situation is occurring more and more recently. I think you have here ARM and all of its chip partners, the people who make the actual chips that ARM has designed. You've got, on the GPU side, NVIDIA creating arguably the best and least expensive graphics cards for computers and such. And that hurts their partners because their partners license the NVIDIA Ampere chips now, I think they're called. Whatever they are, each year they get a different name, but whatever. So people have been raising eyebrows at NVIDIA is selling more and more of their own cards instead of giving those chips to the hardware partners to sell their cards. You've got Google with its Chromebooks, which kind of has passed away because they don't make Pixelbooks anymore. But when they started doing Chromebooks, everyone was like, well, wait, what's going on there? Why aren't they just working with their hardware partners, right? You've got Microsoft with its Surface line. I mean, it's very interesting how licensors have gotten in competition with licensees in several areas, I'd say, over the past 10 years. And I say 10 because that's when Surface came out, but more so in the last few years. And I just wonder if that's a huge change that we should be expecting in general.
It is. I mean, we're all about owning as much of the stack as you can, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
But man, it is killer. All right. We're not going to go into smart home just yet. There's some industrial news. Ha! I know. I get excited.
Well, it's still IoT.
It's industrial IoT, and it's hardware related. Arduino, the makers of the Arduino.
I had to think about that one for a second.
They're boards that allow you to control analog components. It's not like a full computer like a Pi is, although Arduino they're moving up the stack.
It's like a small 8-bit mini computer processor that's very slow, but fun to work with and use for prototyping.
Yes. So they are expanding their Arduino Pro range with something called the Opta. This is their first micro PLC. And y'all are like, what?
What's
Too many
PLC?
acronyms. A PLC is a programmable logic controller, and these things are the computers that are the heart of any industrial or manufacturing system. These are computers designed to work in rugged environments in real time. They tell things like if you've got a jet engine or a centrifuge, it's the thing that's monitoring all the sensors on that and taking that data in and saying, go faster, go slower, you're about to break, you're doing this process now. So that's what a PLC does. I'm sure industrial engineers everywhere are like,
That's the highly technical version of what it can do.
But these have been around forever. And you know how we always talk about the OT and the IT here? These are like quintessential OT. But the whole theme of this story and the next one is like everything OT is converging on IT. And with Arduino's seen this and they're like, okay, how can we make it easier for normal people to program some of these things and play with these things? And so that's what the Opta is about. So it's designed for people who are familiar with PLCs. It supports a lot of existing languages like Modbus, and they include ladder logic diagram and function block diagram. And the idea is that you can use this to build out or prototype any sort of wonky industrial controller use case that you might have and tie it back into things like Bluetooth or Wi-Fi connectivity or machine learning processes. So you're pulling that data from a closed system into an IP system.
That's the key right there. I was waiting for you to say data because you might have 30, 40-year-old machines that are doing things, but you can't use 2022 technology to track that easily. This kind of enables that functionality. So now you can start to better understand what's going on from those old machines because you had no idea before, other than maybe a blinking light or some smoke.
Yes. And I know that everybody who is an old school OT engineer right now is like, Bluetooth and Wi-Fi? and like crossing their fingers. Get away. Get thee behind me, Satan. But it is coming. And this is a device. They've partnered with a company called Finder. And Finder has a lot of credibility in the industrial electronic components industry. And so the hope is that engineers who are familiar with OT will pick one of these up. They will say, hey, let's play with this. What can I pull off machines? How can I do something with this? And they'll get cool ideas, I guess, is kind of the way I think of it.
I'm actually very curious to see, and I'm sure Arduino will amplify what people do with it. I'm curious to see what people do with this thing and what they learn from it.
Yeah, me too. I don't see pricing yet on this. I'll just be real. It's not going to be available until December of this year, but it looks pretty interesting. If you pick one up and you get it, tell me what you're doing with it, because I really want to see it. I think it'd be super cool.
And, oh no, wait, you're not getting off that easy. I have to mention your big news that you shared with me on earlier this week. I forget what day it was.
Oh, I figured we'd do that like after I did it, but sure, go ahead.
No. I've always found that when you're taking classes, it's better to tell everybody earlier because that puts the social pressure on you to really do well. So no pressure though.
I am taking an Arduino class in December. So
Yay!
My weekends in December, I mean, they'll be full of holiday parties and merriment, but they will also be filled with an Arduino coding class.
With all the other young geeks.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be me and a bunch of 14-year-old kids.
Which is going to be fun, because you will be using some Scratch-like stuff, simple block programming. But we also saw, and I'm excited about this, some C++, which is awesome.
Kevin's like, oh, next you can learn assembly. I'm like, ah!
Yes, that's what we did. We did assembly. We were like using those 8-bit registers to their full potential, bit by bit.
Scary. All right. So next up on this OT, IT to IP convergence, Marvell has launched a series of new enterprise networking chips. And y'all are like, oh, Stacy, so much silicon, so much networking, so much industrial. This is really cool. I'm going to talk about it in the newsletter coming out on Friday. But in the meantime, Marvell, which I'm sure y'all are familiar with Marvell, they're a networking chip company. They also have automotive. They have some other lines of business.
They had an ARM business way back in the day which they bought from Intel right as ARM took off.
Oh, yeah, they did. Wow.
Xscale.
I forgot about Xscale. Oh,
yeah.
Anyway, ancient history. Marvell has launched a deterministic Ethernet solution with a bunch of security features. And y'all are like, what? Deterministic Ethernet? So many words. All right. When you're dealing with industrial or manufacturing or any mission critical safety focused operation, if you want to put it on an IP network, you have to make sure you can segregate traffic and allocate it in ways that make sense and prioritize the packets that are mission critical or safety critical. They do this through something called time sensitive networking. That is the formal Ethernet standard. So this particular Marvell silicon will have TSN or time sensitive networking. They're also going to have some older deterministic standards just in case you don't have TSN on your network already. And this is going to help industrial companies who have long said, there's no way I'm going to put this on Ethernet because Ethernet, is just a hodgepodge. You just stick something on an IP network. It's best effort. And you can't have that if it's critical, right? This is going to help resolve that problem and bring some of these proprietary older school equipment and networks into the IP era. Marvell is basically saying with these chips, because they've been doing some custom chips for them, some FPGAs for clients, they've now integrated these into their own chips. So they're putting the design, talent, and engineering behind this because enough people are asking for it that it has become worth it. It's no longer worth it for them to do custom designs because enough people want this set of IP features for industrial settings. So that's why they've released these chips. So this, again, is more on like that whole IT-OT convergence, and it's all converging on IP. How many acronyms? If you drank every time I gave you an acronym, you would be completely sloshed. So let's move on to smart home news. Kevin's like, perk it up.
Yay.
Let's start with Vivint.
What?
Vivint announced their third quarter financial results this week. And, they did really well. Revenue grew by 14%. Yay. They are adding more subscribers at a lower cost per subscriber. Their net loss has improved. I mean, they're still have a net loss, but okay.
I was surprised that they had nearly 2 million total subscribers.
Yeah, they have 2 million total subscribers. The things I cared most about in this particular earnings results news was we've talked about Vivint's latest. They announced earlier this year some pretty cool features on a doorbell camera and lights and AI. So they were using computer vision to detect people who loitered on your property, basically. So they'd be like, hey, there's a face I don't recognize, and they're sticking around.
And the spotlight on the camera can actually shine on people and follow them around just to let them know, yes, I'm watching you.
Yeah. And you can even signal like an alarm to start sounding. So I thought that was actually a pretty effective use of AI, and I was really impressed with it. And Vivint's actually done a lot of really cool stuff very early on in home safety that we've seen other people adopt later on, like a year later. So I expect to see that following kind of siren feature, reactive feature in more cameras going forward. But they also said, one, they're going to double down on smart energy. So they're going to their solar panel business that they're installing. Those are doing gangbusters. So they're going to let customers monitor their home solar energy production from the Vivint app. And I expect once they start doing that, they're going to also bring in some more energy monitoring and management features. They're also developing an integrated indoor lighting solution. They don't have this today. So the fact that they're getting into indoor lighting is pretty impressive, I think. They said they're going to launch that in the first half of 2023. So I'm going to look forward to that. And then we got some more, I guess, device news. So like, for example, when Google just last month launched its Nest Wi-Fi Pro, Google talked about the average home having 25 devices in it. Vivint's saying their smart home customers install approximately 15 devices in their home, and they interact with their smart home system more than 12 times a day. And having that number of devices helps reduce churn. So I thought that was, because I feel like people who are buying Vivint probably are not the cutting edge, right? They're probably a little more normal, I would think. This could be total.
They're literally paying for a cohesive platform. How many other products work with the Vivint stuff? I don't know.
They connect back to like Amazon and Google and such.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess those will act as a bridge. But yeah, I just think of it as like my grandma or my mother-in-law or...
Yeah, because they installed it.
Yeah, Vivint does the work.
Yeah, exactly. It's different than me going to a Best Buy and grabbing a slew of different smart home things from different manufacturers and just throwing it in my house and trying to make it work. People who go to Vivint are getting a professional installation of a cohesive system. You know it's going to work. You don't have to figure it out. They figure it out for you, and boom. And then if you want to add stuff, I guess you just call whoever installed it, and I want to add some cameras. Okay, we can do that.
We'll talk about Matter in a minute because you mentioned you mentioned coherent and cohesive. Haha. So some new devices are out, and we should mention them. Eufy, they have released an item tracker. It is called the Security Smart Track Link. It works with Apple's Find My protocol, which is interesting because Apple has apparently opened up the Find My protocol. So this is like a generic Eufy AirTag.
Yeah, I mean, Apple did.
They said they were going to open it up.
They did.
They said they would open up FaceTime too.
Well, that's true. That's a very fair point, which they never did that. But I mean, I didn't doubt they would do the Find My, because at least here in the US, where it's pretty much, I guess it's about a 50-50 split now, maybe a little more Apple than Android. You've got such a broad audience and base of devices deployed that have Bluetooth and cellular connectivity. So they've got a big network to track and find things. So I'm not surprised that somebody took them up on this. And I don't think they're the first ones, but Eufy's probably they're the newest one, obviously.
Yeah. You can buy these for $19.99 for one or $39.98 for a 2-pack.
I like my AirTags, but these are cheaper at $20 each instead of $30 each. And they have a little hole so you can attach them to things, unlike the AirTag.
That aesthetically non-pleasing hole. Okay, moving on. These aren't new lights. They're just new connectors. But if you have the Nanoleaf lines, which Kevin reviewed, they now have 90-degree connectors instead of just 60-degree connectors. And Kevin explained what the heck this means for us.
Basically, what it really means is that you can do different configurations. Obviously, you can do different geometric patterns. The 60-degree connectors on the original lines, and these lines are LEDs, multicolor LEDs that are roughly 15 inches long, and you use the connectors and you make diamonds and other shapes on your wall and so on, and control the lights or have them listen to music and sync. Now you can do 90-degree angles. I mean, that's kind of like the big deal here, which may not sound like a big deal, but this is kind of typical Nanoleaf to change the way, the aesthetics, I guess, of their products. Normally, they have to come out with whole new products to do that. Let's do light squares. Let's do light hexagons. Let's do light triangles. With the lines, they can just keep changing connectors, which is actually a rather smart way to do it. I didn't anticipate this. I figured I'd be stuck with diamonds and, whatever.
Decahedrons?
Yes, dodecahedrons. Now we can do squares.
Yay. All right. You can move from...
Stacy's not happy with the squares.
No, are they acute or are they obtuse? I guess at
they
60-degree connectors, they would be acute angles.
That is correct. That is correct.
To
My
right
wife
angles.
will be happy. This is like one of the few smart home things that she likes. She likes the lines.
There you go. The lines and the June. Actually, you know what? My husband's favorite devices are also the June and the Nanoleaf. So win all around. Okay.
Tells you a lot about our spouses or us, I guess.
They like we are both married to the same people. No.
14 years today, by the way.
Hey, congratulations, dude.
Thank you. I married up.
You really did.
I know. You don't have to say it so quickly, but yes, I did.
Sorry. You do this by the grace of Barb, so I got to keep her happy.
Yes.
Okay. Have we spoken of Matter yet? No, but we're about to. So
we were going to mention something about Matter with Vivint because just before the show, we checked to see if they're a CSA member.
Oh, right. Because I was thinking like, hey, can we start seeing some of this? Like if I go all in on this Vivint integrated lighting, and then I buy some random like Matter supported sensors, would that work? And the answer is maybe because Vivint's a Matter member, but we don't know yet because they haven't announced their plans. Okay. After we recorded the show last week, they did a big Matter hoo-ha in Amsterdam, and it was pretty much what we said, but we also got news, and we haven't actually mentioned the news, which I now feel bad that we led the show this week with ARM when we actually had Matter news. Holy cow. Here's the things to know. 1, people are still signing up to join Matter. They just got Whirlpool. Yay. 2, they're committed to biannual releases for the Matter spec, which means, look, we're on version 1. Nothing today. We should expect in 6 months' time to see version 1.1 or 1.05. I don't know how they're going to name it.
I'm hoping it's .1 because .05 would be minor.
Yeah, well, it may be because I think a lot of things are going to break in this first iteration. 3, we learned what new device types were coming out, and there are a lot. There are 9 new device types. Here's what they're working on. We don't know when these are going to be released, but there are working groups working on cameras, robot vacuums, white goods and appliances, Wi-Fi access points, energy management, closure sensors, and they have a picture of a garage door, environmental sensing and controls, smoke and carbon monoxide sensors, ambient motion and presence sensing. Now, I'm going to be honest. Prior to Matter being released, they had said that they were going to have quote unquote security sensors as part of the initial standard. Based on the last 4 sensor devices listed in this, I'm like, I guess we've got motion sensors and maybe glass break sensors. I don't even know.
Maybe.
So I don't even know what sensors are actually supported in Matter to begin with. I mean, closure sensors implies all kinds of closures, but Eve, for example, has a door and window sensor, and I assume that's going to get Matter upgraded, yes?
I believe it is scheduled to. I think they said that right before the event, yes. So the Eve door and window sensor is getting an update along with 2, possibly 3 other devices, firmware update on December 12th. So I guess door and window sensors are already in the spec. They have to be.
Yeah, so that's a little confusing. I'm going to assume since they're showing us a picture of a garage door, I'm thinking my cues? Maybe? I don't know what else. Maybe it's the sensors in your locks that detect if the door is actually closed. A lot of questions there. We'll work on that. Okay. I'm not going to go through all the devices, but I did run a story about all the companies that have said they're going to update Matter to Matter. And that is available to y'all and their plans on when and what. For example, Nanoleaf has a lot of Matter-ready devices on the market. None of those Matter-ready devices are actually getting updates so far. What Nanoleaf has said is they're going to launch this new line of essentials, light bulbs and whatnot, that are going to work with Matter, but they're going to launch those at the beginning of next year. And that's probably frustrating if you have the old essential stuff, because that's not going to work. Nanoleaf has not come back to say like when the elements or the lines or other existing gear will get updated. I've heard from people that some people have already gotten their Philips Hue update, which is weird because Philips Hue says they're not going to even update it until the first quarter of 2023. So maybe these people are in developer accounts?
That could be because, I mean, I have a developer account for Apple, for example, and, I have some of the Matter updates in the latest iOS betas, but maybe they've got a beta version, but the rest of us, Philips Hue, no, not till next year.
Yeah, so I'm kind of bummed about that. I was like, ooh, I want the update. Okay, so that's some of the Matter news. And that actually leads us into the Internet of Things podcast hotline, the section of the show where we take your questions and answer them. And the hotline is sponsored by Silicon Labs. Silicon Labs has a Wi-Fi portfolio that is designed specifically for the IoT. It's where multi-protocol, RF performance, ultra-low power consumption, and fast time to market are critical. Learn more about Silicon Labs' low-power Wi-Fi hardware, software, tools, and development kits at scilabs.com. Okay, so speaking of Matter, and before we tell you how to call us, we're going to tell you that last week we took a question about smoke alarms and Matter, and we attributed smoke alarms with security sensors, which apparently was wrong, because that's actually going to be included in some later device type.
Right. Well, I mean, we had said that there aren't any Matter smoke alarms. There probably won't be for a while for various reasons.
And this remains true.
Yeah, that part remains true. But what we thought that these were covered under the current Matter 1.0 implementation, and they are not. So while our answer was correct, some of our information was incorrect.
So yes, there's a working group out there for smoke and carbon monoxide detectors.
Yes, and we are not on it. So
we are not on it. We are not on any working groups. And we're going to talk a little bit about why in the answer to this week's voicemail. But before we get to this, if you have a question for us, give us a call at 512-623-7424. And 1, we might answer your question. 2, you'll be entered to win November's prize, which is a set of twinkly lights. And if you don't know about twinklies, I'm not going to tell you how amazing they are here, but they're pretty amazing.
She loves them.
Look them up. They're great. I have them
Connected
right
holiday lights. Yep.
Connected all the time lights, Kevin.
Okay. They're not Matter certified.
They are not Matter certified, and I don't know if they ever will be. Okay, moving on. Let's hear this week's question.
Hey, y'all. I've been looking forward to the Matter standard since I first heard about it as Project Chip. The fact that it uses human-readable JSON sounds like a DIY dream, but listening to your podcast episode where you discussed Matter security has raised some concerns for me. Am I going to need to get my DIY stuff Matter certified? Am I going to need to start signing my code with a certificate authority before real Matter devices acknowledge it? I'd appreciate your insight. Thanks for the podcast.
So this is very interesting because we do occasionally do our own little DIY projects. And not that I ever thought about this, but I probably should have. Can I get things to work with Matter if I do a DIY project?
No.
That was quick and easy. No, you can. Next question.
So let's talk a little bit about what it means to be Matter certified. And this is an interesting question because a couple years ago, or maybe a year ago, I was at an event and some people who worked with Home Assistant asked me, they were like, look, we want to bring Home Assistant on, but it's really expensive to join the Matter working group. And they were right, it is. And so they were trying to figure out if there were like discounts for like DIY or open source projects. And Home Assistant, they did eventually join, but I don't think they got like a smoking deal or anything like that. And if you're just building for yourself, the answer is going to be probably not. You won't work directly with Matter. And the reason is because Matter has all this security overhead and certification overhead. And what I mean by that is to get a Matter certified product, even one that comes out and just like works with it. If you want to use the trademark, you're going to have to pay $2,500 per product to the CSA. If you want to just get it certified, you've got to pay $500 per year per product. And that'll be due every year on the date that you got the product originally certified. If you're never going to sell something, I do expect we'll see code that lets you work with things with Matter, and you can play with that. I don't know how you're going to handle some of the security and certification aspects of getting them on the network to talk to your other Matter devices. Because right now what happens is when your Matter device joins the network, it does a certificate exchange and it says, hey, I'm such and such. I work with Matter. I'm legit. Check my stuff in the Matter blockchain ledger. And it does. And it says, yeah, you are legit. Okay, come join my little Matter cohort here in the house. I don't see how your devices are going to be able to do that without having that entry into the ledger.
Yeah. Matter certified devices are not going to want to play nice with your own little Matter project, I don't think. And at first I was like, oh, people I've read about people doing like open thread and implementations, but that's just, the communication. It's not the application layer stuff.
Right. That's where they get you, at the application layer.
Yeah.
I'll just let y'all know, because it's not cheap to have a Matter device. Like I mentioned, if you are the lowest level, which is an associate, which is basically like you want a Matter badge on your light bulb, you will pay that $2,500 per product and an additional $500 every year to keep getting that certified and badged. If you are like a developer who wants to develop products on behalf of your customers for Matter, you're probably looking at becoming an adopter, and that is $7,000 a year. If you're like Google or Amazon or Apple or Comcast or any of these other big guys who are like leading the charge, you're going to be a promoter, and that's $105,000 a year, which is a lot.
Yeah, I know that's a little outside of our budget. And I'm just going to say I'm personally a little disappointed by this, because a lot of the early talk when it was Project Chip is, we're going to open source a lot of this and so on and so forth. Well, what good is that if, you can't really do anything with it without paying the tax, so to speak?
I will be interested to see, because you can download the SDK on GitHub. If you can run something locally on your network and talk to Matter devices, I don't think you'll be able to successfully, but I'm waiting to hear. Again, it's early days. So,
yes.
And as time goes by, we'll see better, more robust software stacks trying to like today, if you buy a device with Wi-Fi, it may not have the Wi-Fi cert on it, right? Because there are software stacks that are still reputable enough that the company making that device doesn't have to go through the Wi-Fi Alliance to get it. Sure, if you're Google, you're going to go through the Wi-Fi Alliance. But there are plenty of products that don't. And I think we'll see something like that with Matter, but the security certification side of it does make me wonder if that's even possible.
Mm-hmm. I said it months ago. Open Matter. Open Matter.
Okay. We're not going there yet. Okay. I hope that answers your question. Maybe not in the way you were hoping for. Maybe you'll test it out and see how far you can go. But if you have a question, give us a call at 512-623-7424. And you will also be entered to win the Twinkly's Lights for November. Woo! And that concludes this segment of the show. But please stay tuned for our guest, Matt Rose, who is the CEO of Apana, a company building industrial IoT water management systems. But first, a message from our sponsor. And this week's sponsor is ARM. Hey everyone, we are taking a quick break from the Internet of Things podcast for a message from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is ARM. And I have Kevin Ryan, Senior Director of IoT Go-to-Market and Ecosystem from ARM. So first up, what is ARM doing in the IoT?
ARM is focused sharply on empowering our partners in the software developer ecosystem to thrive and excel in unlocking the opportunities of the IoT. We are focusing our efforts on three key areas. Firstly, ARM has the largest computational footprint on the planet, and a huge portion of this is IoT and embedded. Our partners shipped over 29 billion ARM-based chips in 2021. Around 70% of these were designed for IoT and embedded. This computational footprint is extraordinarily capable and rapidly evolving to match the workloads of tomorrow. Secondly, we believe rapid innovative software development is key to the next phase of IoT. We are laser focused on enabling developers through offerings like ARM virtual hardware. And finally, we're committed to standardization initiatives driving the advancement of the IoT. These initiatives include PSA Certified, Project Cassini, and Project Centauri, as well as efforts like Matter.
And how are you accelerating software development with ARM virtual hardware?
ARM Virtual Hardware provides models of popular IoT development kits, ARM Cortex-M and A processors, and Corestone solutions in the cloud for developers to build and test software without the need for physical hardware. It allows device and application developers to scale IoT software development and accelerate product design by up to 2 years. We're working with companies across the ecosystem, such as AWS, Oracle, Raspberry Pi, and Kixo, to either bring their hardware into the platform or to integrate ARM virtual hardware into their platforms and services. We're also working with Matter to explore the integration of ARM virtual hardware into the core CI flows of the Matter CI/CD infrastructure. This will ensure product developers can instantly access a scalable virtual test environment that maps directly to the wide ecosystem of ARM-based computing platforms for IoT. Stay tuned for more developments in this area.
And what types of use cases are you seeing ARM virtual hardware being used for?
The first one is the ability to start developing software ahead of hardware availability. The second use case is continuous integration and testing in the cloud. Real hardware is difficult to scale. ARM virtual hardware allows developers to move testing to the cloud infrastructure, enabling quick scaling to hundreds or thousands of boards in minutes. The third use case is MLOps. With the increasing adoption of ML at the edge, the ability to estimate how fast an ML model would run on the device is critical. By integrating ARM virtual hardware with ML tools such as Kixo, we are empowering data scientists to iterate experiments with different network architectures and optimizations much more quickly compared to with real hardware.
Excellent. Where can our listeners go to find out more about ARM virtual hardware?
Simply visit arm.com/virtual-hardware or search ARM virtual hardware in your search engine.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and today's guest is Matt Rose, who is the CEO and co-founder of Apana. Hello, Matt. How are you today?
Great, Stacey. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
And I am really excited to have you because we're talking about something that I think the IoT, this is why I've been excited about the IoT for like the last decade. There's a lot of opportunity here for ESG topics like environmental, social, government. And you guys focus mostly on water, although we may get into what you might do after water. But why don't you tell us a little bit about what Apana does?
Well, what we do is we're water savings as a service. And what we do is we install water measurement equipment, digital twin within an industrial environment. And then we take that real-time information into the cloud and distill it into digestible components for our customer and actionable information. And so think of a loop where we look at the data, we take large, overwhelming data sets, we distill it into its basic information, and then send that information to the customer to make their business more efficient, which results in ESG impacts. And that's where we're seeing some of our best impacts with our customers.
And some of your customers include Costco, you've got Coca-Cola plants, big companies that have invested in this. And y'all started early. The company started in 2014, and I'm not saying that ESG wasn't a huge thing back then, but it was maybe less of a thing. So can you talk about the journey from what you started doing and then how that started translating into this environmental focus and what has kind of shifted the conversation for your customers?
Well, we began before 2014 as a wastewater treatment company. We used to treat commercial centers that didn't have access to municipal sewer. So think of a Walmart in the middle of a green field, and we would come and install the wastewater equipment for that center. When we installed our equipment, we learned quickly that many of the design people told us that we were consuming more water than the design people were telling us. And so we had a problem with our customer where we had to go back to them and said, well, you need to use less water or you need to build a bigger plant. And at that time, we had a customer, Costco Wholesale, came back to us and said, well, we shouldn't be wasting that amount of water. Can you develop a system that lets our frontline employees know when we're in a wasteful condition so we're using water efficiently? And we took on that challenge and became Apana. We started with 2 pilots in Mexico City and Guadalajara, and we saved about 30% by just taking real-time information, digesting it into very digestible parts, and giving actionable information to frontline workers on what to do. And we saved about 30% on those 2 pilots. We expanded to 11. And then when we expanded to 11 pilots, we got the same results. However, we came across a scale problem. We were using hard wires to connect water meters to networks. And so we had to build a telemetry system in order to, with good data quality and integrity and service level, to get information from sensors to the cloud. And so we hired a team of ex-military drone circuit board designers who helped design the telemetry system for us to connect an off-the-shelf smart meter with AMR or pulse capability and get that information cleanly to the cloud. And then take these large data sets that overwhelm customers and make it just very digestible, and that we provide actionable guidance for what we are seeing on consumption. And then that provides the benefit because they're making their business more efficient and that they're using less resources. And then they can actually quantify the savings of the E part of the ESG reports.
And we're going to get into some of the scaling conversations and the data conversations in a little bit. But let's come back to this kind of ESG idea, because you've mentioned savings. For a long time, people invested in IoT for an ROI. So many acronyms. And now there are a couple things happening that have made it, I don't want to say less ROI focused, because I still think, if you save on resources, you're also saving money, but have kind of driven the conversation around ESG more. So what are the trends you're seeing that are driving your customers to move, I guess, beyond ROI?
Most of our customers in the last year, ESG was sort of the catalyst that made the sale happen versus just being a business efficiency tool. We've looked at hundreds of ESG reports, the E part especially, with water and energy, and we've seen 100. It was very squishy on standardization of how consumption was reported and how impact was reported, and we were able to show our customers that one, we measure in real time, we're able to provide precise measurement. And then also we define all the impacts that the customer did in order to improve, to show the impact and the benefit that they were having on their ESG reports. And I think that's what's really excited a number of our customers lately.
And how are you seeing your customers communicate information to the frontline workers and incentivize them? I feel like it's very common in the IoT for people to buy some fancy system that tracks everything, and then they think they've done it, but they really need to build the business processes in place. So when it comes to something like saving on wastewater or saving on water, what are kind of some of the best practices that you've seen outside of hey, you've bought our stuff, now what?
Well, there's hundreds of platforms and there's hundreds of, and if you're a frontline worker in today's world, you're overwhelmed with data from all different types of sources. A lot of activities are being placed on it. How do you just take this other input and fold it into your operations? And I think it's the design of how the platform interacts with people is where the most benefit's going to happen in the future. How we design our platform is just to distill into the very basic parts that is relevant. Like, for example, at a Costco, a manager is more concerned about a customer experience and cleaning up a jar of pickles that falls than whether there's a leak in their evac system in the refrigeration area. Getting that information in a very clean, distinct manner to the customer so they can act on it and then move on to their next project. I think a lot of the systems that we've seen within our customers, it kind of creates the onus on the customer in the front line to figure out what's going on and act on it. And I think the more that we can make that automated, clean, and actionable for the customer, then that provides the most benefit.
So what specifically does that look like? Do they get a flashing red light? Do they get a alert on their watch? Do they get a dashboard?
It's whatever they want. If they want a text, they can have a text that then has a link to go to the control center. If they want it in an email form that gives the instructions on what to do and where to go and who to call if you're not able to solve the problem. Or in some cases, we'll send it to a central area where someone can dispatch it. It depends on what the customer prefers.
And this gets into this idea that we hear all the time, data is the new oil. Oh my gosh, digital twins, everything. We'll see everything as it's happening. And y'all probably deal with quite a bit of data coming off your platform. So how do you turn that into something useful for customers? Like, what is that process and how much experience do you need to deliver a good result there for your customers?
Well, we deal with billions of data points. We're overwhelmed with data points. And then what we do to make it digestible is we break the data into its parts by function. Is it irrigation? Is it operations? Is it a piece of equipment like cooling tower, evaporative condenser? And we build analytics that look at patterns over years and time on what can go wrong. Is a scaling condition happening within a cooling tower? Why is more hot water being consumed during a clean phase for a food and beverage customer versus another shift? And then from that, we're able to build analytic libraries and suites that can identify 70 to 80% of those things. And so it's generally easy for us to go into a new customer and get them mostly up to speed. And then each customer has unique site conditions or maybe even unique operational procedures and things that we can turn the knobs and easily adapt.
Okay, let's talk about the tech because I'm a great nerd and y'all are using LoRa. Proprietary LoRa initially. And so talk to me about you mentioned this earlier, scaling. So you were doing wired, and how did you decide on LoRa, and why did you even start with wired?
Well, remember, we come from the wastewater business. And so in wastewater, a lot of things are wired to a PLC or connected to something. And that's what we were used to. And so we initially started with that. However, the challenge with water meters is that water meters are generally in very difficult places. They're in a vault in a parking lot with rebar and in some cases snakes. I've actually put my hand in one that had a snake in it. They're inside of pieces of equipment, Faraday cages for radios, but they still have to you still have to get that information out of there. They're inside of walls. The as-builts for plumbing can be some of the most complex, chaotic as-builts because plumbing changes all the time with retrofits and things. And so we learned that wiring became very expensive very quickly because to dig a trench from a parking lot to a building, you can't put wires inside of some pieces of equipment and so on. And so from that, we realized we needed to go to a wireless technology. We went out and tested all sorts of different systems that are used in the oil industry. And this is in 2014 and things. And we found systems that work, but we couldn't get the data integrity or the battery life or the service level that we were looking for. And so we figured for us to be successful, we were going to have to build our own with the knowledge that we had. And that's when we hired a team of ex-military drone circuit board designers from the Portland area. And then we're able to set our requirement and our specifications and build a system with edge devices and a gateway that could work in these difficult environments. LoRa made a heck of a lot of sense to us because of its range is great and the bandwidth's lower. And at that time, we were really excited about it. We had to do a proprietary version of it because another huge requirement at that time was battery life. Our pucks have batteries in them and they need to last as long as possible. We want them to last over 6 years. And we were having challenges using LoRaWAN in order to get that type of battery life. But today we believe that we're going to migrate to LoRaWAN because I think that there's been enough improvement in that in order for us to justify going towards LoRaWAN.
Other than battery life, what are the benefits of LoRaWAN versus proprietary LoRa?
Well, the benefits of proprietary LoRa is perfect for us because we want the most penetration within complex industrial environments and metal and Faraday cages. And when we did private LoRa, we really got the best performance in all those areas. And in 2014, LoRaWAN was great, but it consumed more power than we want. And so now I wouldn't say that LoRaWAN is better. LoRaWAN is caught up to where we wanted our spec to be. And then that makes it better for us to add additional sensors to our existing networks that are in place with our current customers. And so it allows us to offer more smart building opportunities. And that's why we're migrating towards LoRaWAN.
And let's talk about some of those other opportunities. You're obviously doing water today. what might you do next?
Well, our customers are asking us to apply our approach to water to gas and electricity. And that shocked us when we first heard that. It's like, because we specialize in water, we understand water. But it's interesting. The problem that we heard is that they've invested in technology to measure energy or electricity and gas, but they couldn't extract the value from that information to make their businesses better in real time. They said they liked the Apana approach and said, could you do the same for electric and gas and have a single pane of glass that would cover all three of our utilities? And so we've been taking on that challenge, and we have pilots with a couple of our customers right now where we're demonstrating that the same principles apply. And so that's the biggie for utility use. But also it's bringing in other factors. It's bringing in, for a car wash, a car counter into the equation, so we can track how many gallons of water being consumed per gallon or per car, or combined with other smart building systems, refrigeration efficiency systems. There are systems that are very effective, but need really clean data at 15-second interval, and we can provide that to make their systems more efficient. So we're sort of in a good interoperability hub point where we can combine to make smart building products with people that already have a large segment of a market, or that we can build a solution for maybe like monitoring CO2 consumption or things like that, where that can provide additional benefit to the customer while leveraging the existing network, LoRa network installed.
And the water expertise that you've gotten to, that's possibly an 8-year effort. I'm assuming that you've gotten better over time. So to add something like understanding electricity flows and usage and efficiency, that's a data science problem, not necessarily once you're on LoRaWAN, you just throw those sensors in your network and hopefully that works. So how long do you think it takes to build up that kind of expertise there?
Well, that's a good question, because it's a new product development project. We're not naive about it that you can just do this and you get magic. However, solving the problem of the telemetry is fairly straightforward. We've been able to, using our same techniques, get data for gas flow and for electricity into our platform. And then from that, it's learning what the patterns are and developing enough track time in order to build the libraries that will help our customers. But we can catch the low-lying fruit out of the gate. Why is this building using 3/4 of the power on a holiday than it does in a non-holiday when they tell us that the line shut down? And then we're also able to start creating the water, electricity, and water gas nexuses. If a pump is pumping too much water, it's also consuming energy. We're able to start measuring that. Again, on the analytics side, this is a new product development, and that we're just at the early stages of taking this pretty cool data and making it useful to the customers, but we're expanding and we're raising funds in order to keep continuing to develop these types of libraries and expand.
Awesome. All right. Well, Matt, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
No, glad to be here, and I'm a fan of your show, and it's an honor.
And that concludes this week's episode of the Internet of Things podcast. Please join us next Thursday, and don't forget to subscribe. And if you can't get enough IoT news, I would love for you to sign up at www.stacyoniot.com for our weekly IoT newsletter, where we explain all kinds of things that we don't even get to on the show. Once again, thank you for listening, and please subscribe.